It looks like
I know JD pretty well.
vibrations coming from here, but it sound looks like it's coming from the back.
He's a great guy.
I'll let you deal with that part.
Okay, we'll figure it out. How about you talk and I drive? How's that?
Well, it's not gonna work, but if you hold the mic over the speaker.
I think he has.
We'll do that.
Did you know Jeffrey?
I don't have the paper. It was laying here, but it's not anymore. I don't know.
Just because that's what he does.
He molds rehabilitation.
I'll come over right after. Very nice.
You know, I would much rather have a judge who reads everything, who pays attention, and gives you a hard time. That's just like, you know, all right. Yeah, I can't think of it.
Good evening. Would you all stand with me for the invocation and pledge of allegiance, please? This past week, we lost one of our long-time city employees. Lisa Stevens had been with the city of Vienna for many, many years. And so if you all would keep her in your memory and be with the family as they mourn her loss. And Bill, if you'd pray with us, please.
Sure. Heavenly Father, I thank you for our city. I thank you for the work that these men and women have committed themselves to serve the people of our community so that it might be a safe place to live and to raise a family. I thank you for the work that they do to make that happen. We do want to pause and pray for Stephen's family. Pray that they will be comforted. Friends and family to gather around in ways that are blessing. And Lord, I pray for the meeting this evening, that the things that need to be done to help this city be a good place, a better place, I pray that they be done. Just grant wisdom.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to call to order this regular session of the Vienna City Council for May the 11th, 2023. Let the record reflect that I've taken roll that all members of council are present this evening. Councilman Bibby is joining us by phone. Having a quorum, we will proceed. First item on our agenda this evening is our public forum. We have 5 people that have signed up to speak, and we will start this evening with Brenda Powell.
Good evening. I wanted to come before council because there's a couple of things that I just wanted to put forth that I felt needed to be addressed. Others might not feel the same, but I would like to do that. The codified ordinances for the city of Vienna. I'm glad that we have them, but I feel there's a really big issue with them. And the fact that, especially when we're going into rezoning and whatnot, the 34th Street property and the property up at 58708 Grand Central Avenue, I feel, in my opinion, of what's been going on with it is that it doesn't stipulate just exactly what the city wants for properties that are zoned and have been zoned prior to residential. When you're wanting to change from residential to commercial, I do feel that you need to change the ordinances. If they're not saying what you want them to say, then you need to change them. Instead, maybe even make an ordinance specifically for the residential property, so that it can be stipulated how they have to be worded to be able to have a commercial. Right now, it's just not To me, it's bending things in the ordinance as far as, 30 days, if it isn't occupied within 30 days or by the state with a year, it still needs to be clarified and to where that it's not twisted around and made to be able to comply to whatever you're wanting it to be. So I do feel the council needs to take this seriously, and you need to look at the ordinances and zoning and to see if you can't get it to be what it needs to be, for those properties that are designated around residential. The other thing I wanted to bring up was about a couple, 2 or 3 meetings ago. I brought up about the Ohio derailment and the concern for the tracks that go so close to houses and the actual well 7 and 8. I wanted to bring forward something that hasn't been talked about, and I know that you did an update on the disaster emergency plan, and I think that's wonderful. I'm glad that you did that. But I want to add something in the fact that in that plan, I was thinking about it when I was going down River Road and past the train. With the tanker cars that they have, there's one that I noticed that stuck out, and it's a Union tank car company. It's UTLX, and they rent those, or lease them, I must say, those tankers to companies. And I also noticed down in Parkersburg today, CMRX. That one's associated with Chemours. I just think that we need to go a little bit further with these tanker cars coming through our community. We need to, I'm hoping that council will think about this and see if they can't get something from the state or something somewhere on the transportation with these tanker cars. Because how can you really address spills or derailments or whatever if you don't know what's in the tanks? They should have a record of whatever they are carrying. And I think it would be an idea for council to approach this a little bit further, maybe even through the state or the county, and see if you can find out more about it so that you can have these things on hand on what's coming through our community. And not only that, but to get that information so that you can have it. We also need an alert system. If there would happen to be a derailment of tanker cars or whatever it may be of toxic chemicals, we need to have some type of an alert system here within our community to alert the people that live here so that you can go ahead with the plan, but they need to be alerted of it. I know when the fire happened down in Parkersburg, where the Ames building was, it was 5 hours before we were notified on our phone about that fire. And we were standing outside 2 streets over from where we live with this great big huge, cover of whatever was in it over top of us. We had some difficulty breathing at that moment. So, we need to have more of an alert system here within our city to help the people that live here to keep them safe. That's all I needed to say. Thank you.
Tracy Mitchell.
I'm here because I've got a concern with my next door neighbors and their vehicles parking in between the 2 houses. It looks like I'm going to have to put up a 6-foot fence to the edge of my house and a 4-foot down a little bit of ways. I'm concerned about the ordinance codes and the bylaws because I don't understand what protects me from them parking between the 2 houses. There's only 10 feet, and I've got a gas meter that's on my side of the property for my house. I don't know what else to do other than maybe going and get an attorney. And at this point, I'm frustrated, I'm irritated, and I don't feel like I'm being heard by my neighbors. 95% of the time I leave everybody alone. The only time I come out is usually to go to the store or to come pay the water bill or something like that. I shouldn't have to go down and spend another $3,000 to keep them off my side of the property. I don't even go over there. I don't bother anybody, but they don't want to listen. And I'm irritated. Thank you.
Tammy Rhodes.
I'm here tonight to talk about the rezoning on F5708 Grand Central. The first thing that I listed on those pages is just the West Virginia Code, where it talks the governing body, with the advice of the Planning Commission, must find the amendment is consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan. I'm not going to read all of that. I brought it up last week. The next section are parts of the comprehensive plan that are inconsistent with zoning that property from residential to commercial. I don't really want to read through all of these, but generally it says that land uses have to be compatible with one another. Local business, should be looking at working with the area roundtable to recruit new businesses to the town center. Commercial areas are located along Grand Central from 23rd south to the city boundaries. Provide for commercial space in well-located areas. Commercial uses should be adequately buffered from adjacent residential areas. Existing neighborhoods should be protected and improved. Protect and improve the quality of residential living. Living areas should not contain uses that are incompatible. Effective transition between residential living areas and adjoining areas. And then the economic plans, where it says that land uses are established that are compatible with each other. Then it talks about our plan being consistent with Wood County's plan, and to work with the Grand Central Mall owners to implement a mixed-use development to reinvigorate the commercial district. Town center strategies are to revitalize downtown Vienna. Residential, provide new housing, diverse housing, pedestrian walkways, and buffers between residential and non-residential areas. And again, buffering residential from commercial. The first thing I want to show you is the actual land use map from the 2007 comprehensive plan. Mr. Shaw has shown this before. I finally got a good copy of it. Is there a way to get this off?
It's not on the right input.
What input do I put it on? Is there an IT person here? Okay. Well, if you look at the first land use map, you're going to see Grand Central Avenue coming up around this way. And right here in this little corner of that yellow, if you can see that, there is the red spot for the commercial category for 5708 58th Street. This is not a zoning map. This is a land use map. Zoning has nothing to do with this. The only reason that's red is because the way that they do the comprehensive plans is to get the tax category information from the state. So this is how the property is taxed. And if I go buy a piece of property, I get the deed. The assessor's office sends a letter to me saying, how are you planning to use this land? Is it residential? Is it rental? Is it commercial? Is it vacant? That's where this information comes from. It does not come from a zoning map. The next is the future land use map that says until the next comprehensive plan starts. if you notice in the second map, none of the, well, let me go back to that first one. Throughout all that, through all these areas, there's one on 39th and Grand Central, some down here close to the park, and some other red scattered spots throughout this map that show that those are commercially taxed properties. Again, doesn't mean there's a commercial property there. It just means the owners did not change that to residential or vacant or whatever. In the new one, this is the future land use map, there is not one area separate red through any of this. All those ones that are in red have been removed from the future land use map. I also have a couple years ago, I bought the property at 39th and Grand Central, the old personal care home, at a tax sale. I had called the city and I had asked them if I could, do something with that once was.
Ms. Rhodes, I'm sorry, your time's up.
I just got a couple more things, if I could.
I would like to move to extend Ms. Rhodes' time to 2 more minutes, please.
I'm sorry, I don't hear a second. All right, Ms. Rhodes, I'm sorry, your time's up.
Okay. I wish I had rabbits. I'm so glad you said something. You've been picking me up pretty like this.
Mark Shaw.
Try not to trip over this. So my name is Mark Shaw. My wife and I are the owners of 5708 Grand Central. And on behalf of her and myself, we want to thank everybody for hearing our request and considering the zoning amendment. Since our first discussion with the City of Vienna back last summer, we met with code enforcement and city council. My wife would probably attest that I could try patience, and everybody that we had met with had met every one of my questions with patience and professionalism and knowledge. And beyond that, after the last meeting, we had an outpouring of support from people in the community that were excited for us to move forward with our plans for the property. So, and with that outpouring, we've just been overwhelmed and humbled, and to say the least, we are blessed. And so with that, I just wanted to address a couple things. Obviously, Ms. Rhodes had talked about the comprehensive plan, which through the entire process of the Planning Commission, everything that we did was surrounding that comprehensive plan. I mean, every point that we walked through was directly reflecting back to that comprehensive plan. And I have copies of the application that I'll leave with y'all here in just a minute. We're hoping that, obviously, you can read this comprehensive plan, and I read the economic plan, and the cultural plan is being directly in line with the comprehensive plan with our request. So I think it's an interpretive issue that we're running into based on whatever agenda you're pushing. So that being said, the fact that we've walked through this by the book every step of the way, and I think it is contiguous with other similar land uses. It just happens that right across 58th Street is outside of the city. I mean, it can be anything it wants across the street. So in the next 5 to 10 businesses to the north are all commercial. This just so happens to be inside of the city that could actually support the city rather than being outside of the city and it can be anything it wants. So again, we've put protective covenants on it. We went over that last meeting. Really can't be anything like a gambling joint. It can't be a vape shop. It can't sell, can't be a bar. It can't sell lewd materials. So I think the community is protected and would benefit greatly from having this vacant building restored to the beauty it was in 1944 when it was built. So that being said, we would assume anywhere that would actually increase property values and be a great benefit to the surrounding owners. And again, most of the owners that we talked to that were home when we walked around had no objection to it, and actually were pretty excited for the use that we had intended. So that's it. Just wanted to thank you again for your time and consideration. If I could. This is our planning commission application. It ties back to the comprehensive plan.
Barbara Gelpy.
Not quite sure where to begin. One of the things that concerns me is that as I left last meeting, the takeaway I had was that largely this was not going to change anything. Obviously, the appearance of the building, but that really it wasn't going to become any of these dastardly things that we imagined, and that was already taken care of. Well, if that being the case, why do we need approval for this to be a business location? I'm a little at a loss for that. Probably a lawyer could explain it, because they have a tendency to want more laws because that keeps them in business. Sorry about that. If, in fact, this is not going to become any of those things, and we've been assured that it's not because there's already so much on the books that would limit that, what is this for? I don't understand. And so maybe at some point somebody can explain that to me. And I was concerned about the coming and going. I think I made that clear. Families, grandchildren, playing in the backyard. You stand on the edge of my property to the edge of the building. We're not talking about that long a distance. We're pretty close. So all these people that are showing such support are people that don't live there. I do. And so I'm concerned about the coming and going. And that's part of the issue. And the other thing is, I've worked since I was 17. And I was left with 2 children under 5, and I've raised them and put them through college. And I've spent a good deal of money to try to make sure that they have a good home. And this, I think, does affect my property value. And this is what I got, people. I'm a teacher. I've spent my life working with kids. Love them. Wouldn't change that for anything, not even more money. But I thought I kind of had a safe haven, and I don't feel safe anymore. That bothers me. And I don't know what else to do but to say that. Now, you may think that's ridiculous. I'm quite sure that every single one of you went to personally visit the property to see what distances are involved, because that would be a responsible thing to do as a city council member. And I have no doubt that you've already investigated that. But when I come out my back door and I look across, I'm not talking about very long distance. So I have concerns about the value of my property and the people that will be coming and going. And I'll quit before you can stop me, all right?
You still have 2 minutes to go. You're good.
No, that's all right. If you can't make your point, I'll get going.
There you go. Thank you, ma'am. The minutes from the regular council meeting on April the 27th, 2023 have been printed, posted, and circulated. Are there any corrections to the minutes? there are no objections, and the minutes will stand approved as posted. Order of the Treasurer, Councilman Leach.
Reconciliation of funds for the City of Vienna for May 2023 have been reviewed. The accounts are in order and the city is financially sound.
All right, thank you. This evening, we have one item under unfinished business. It's an ordinance on second reading, rezoning all of lots 5 and 6 of the subdivision of lot number 1 of Midway Addition, commonly known as 5708 Grand Central Avenue, from residential to C1 commercial. Be it ordained by the Common Council of the City of Vienna with the advice of the City of Vienna Planning Commission from their meeting held on 12/19/22 at 5:30 p.m. and with the finding that said rezoning is consistent with the City of Vienna's adopted comprehensive plan, all that certain property located at 5708 Grand Central Avenue, Vienna, Wood County, West Virginia, more completely described as all of lots 5 and 6 of the subdivision of lot number 1 of Midway Addition, as set out in deed recorded in the office of the Clerk of the Wood County Commission, Deed Book 1349, page 528, is rezoned from its present classification of residential to the zoning classification of C1 commercial. Further, it is ordered that the official zoning map be updated to reflect the new zoning classification. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the ordinance rezoning lots 5 and 6 on second reading.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the ordinance on second reading. Is there any further comments?
Yeah, I think, first of all, Russ had mentioned making a record. So I think the first thing we should do is go ahead and take both documents that were presented to council, from the Shaws and for Tammy, and I think these need to become a part of the record as to the, I guess, the opposing viewpoints. So I'd like those to be attached. Secondly, I have visited the property. I do know the proximity to other locations, and so of Russ's 7 points, and I will be brief. So number one, the existing uses and zoning of nearby property. It is at the edge of Vienna, close to commercial property, has been noted in the county, of course. And it is separated, except for one house, with a road in between that property and other properties. Number two, to the extent that property values are diminished by the particular zoning restrictions, there's no evidence of diminished value. It's been an existing commercial building for decades, and in fact, I think the plans to do it are going to improve property values. It's a subjective opinion, but the property's been blighted for some time, and the improvements, based on what I've seen they've done inside upstairs, I expect will restore the original character of the building. Number three, to the extent which the destruction of property values of plans promotes the health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the public, there's no evidence that refusing this request would promote that. And in fact, the stated use, at least in the short term, is that it would promote health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the public. For the relative gain to the public as compared to the hardship imposed upon the individual property owner. The gain to the public, as has been stated many times, would actually come from the refurbishment of the property, similarly improvements in the upstairs apartments. And the number five, the suitability of the subject property for zone purposes, it's ideally suited. It's just, this is Frank's grocery store. This is a little piece of Vienna history. Trying to, we have all seen, and I mentioned this before, trying to reconfigure this into something that it's not, I don't think serves any ideal purpose. And what's being promoted, I think, is actually kind of a nice little thing for Vienna. I'm a history buff. I've restored a lot of properties I've never owned anew anything, and I think the plans that the property owners have are consistent with the interests of Vienna generally. I think that also the restrictions, both with respect to city ordinances as its proximity to the church, as well as the private land use restrictions that are already added to the deed, really do ensure the fact that this is not going to become some nefarious site, which I've made the point before, just doesn't survive in Vienna because that's not our community. Let's see, the length of time the property has been vacant as zoned, considered in the context of land development in the area in the vicinity of the property. I mean, this is a stable neighborhood. Really, nothing's changed there in decades. The houses that are there, this building that's there have been. There's not room or it's a stable neighborhood. It's not going to change. And this little building has been as part of that neighborhood as long as anything else. And 7, the adopted comprehensive plan. I think it's a little no impact on that. Like I said, it's a few hundred square feet. It's a quaint little piece of Vienna that, I would like to see survive and continue to represent what it was in the original. Don't think it would necessarily qualify for the National Register of Historic Places, but it maybe. And so that, between the two documents, both pros and cons, that I've asked the recorder to put in the record, and my comments, I believe, is the best I can do to make the record that Russ asked.
I have some comments as well, Mayor, if I may. First, I want to start off by saying that the state law requires that we have a comprehensive plan, okay? The state law also requires that any zoning amendments be consistent with that comprehensive plan. Everybody has an opinion about what the comprehensive plan is, but if you read the comprehensive plan, specifically pages 65 and 68, they outline the goals for the land use, the commercial land use, okay? Now, council wasn't provided a copy of the comprehensive plan. I happen to have an old copy that was very difficult to read that I got several years ago from the Planning Commission board member. But recently, through Ms. Rhodes, I was able to get a color copy of the comprehensive plan. And in that comprehensive plan, there are 2 maps that are very significant. Map number 1 is the current, in 2007, when the comprehensive plan was adopted, was the current land use, okay? And it did show properties north of 34th Street as being commercial. There were little red dots on there, and this is on the map that's been passed out to council, so you guys can look at it and follow along. They were not actual commercial properties. They were just on the tax rolls as being commercial. For whatever reason, the former property owner, didn't go down to the courthouse and get that changed over. Then the other significant map is the future land use map. And that's what the comprehensive plan is talking about, okay? So when you look at the future land use map, properties south of 34th Street, those are all commercial properties, and they run all the way to the end of Vienna's boundary where we sit next to Parkersburg, okay? That's all commercial. Then when you actually read the narrative part of the comprehensive plan, pages 65 and 68, as I just mentioned, it talks about the commercial district kind of being put into 2 sections, if you can imagine this for a second. Ms. Rhodes talked about the town center, which is considered to be actually 36th Street to 23rd Street. This is the old Vienna Central Business District that we're also familiar with. My business is in this district, the Dollar General, Dutton's Old Pharmacy, okay? And then south of 23rd Street, we start getting into what they call the commercial area, which is the big box stores as we get to the mall and so on. And there are recommendations for each area. There's a recommendation for the town center area, and there's a recommendation for the more commercial area, the big box area. Everything in the comprehensive plan supports commercial development from 34th Street south, not 34th Street north, okay? The comprehensive plan does not provide for expanding commercial use north of 36th Street. It just doesn't, okay? 5708 Grand Central is almost 24 blocks north of the commercial district. If zone commercial, the property would be the least restrictive. One piece of property surrounded by surrounded by residential, then being the least restrictive when you have residential property, which is the most restrictive. So it's been brought up about the deed covenants. Okay. Yes, there are deed covenants that are placed in there that are enforced by the previous landowner, previous property owner, not by the city of Vienna. For the city of Vienna to enforce those covenants, we would have to go to court to do that. There's no guarantee that the court would even find us to have standing in the court, okay? So I think that the restrictions are really, they're meaningless. I mean, I can appreciate the approach that was taken, but it doesn't prevent a vape shop from going there. It doesn't prevent, well, it actually doesn't even prevent a bar from going in there that only serves beer. And while it's close to a church within 200 feet, we don't have a vape shop ordinance that prevents that, okay? This council voted against that, okay? The state code exempts Class A liquor licenses from, you can't serve alcohol or wine within 200 feet of a church, okay? But it exempts beer, okay? So, and I'm not making this up, by the way. I've been in many emails back and forth with the city attorney, and I'm sure he'll jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, so you can have many different undesirable things in that location. Rezoning 5708 to commercial doesn't provide adequate protection for the residents or the church across the street. And the church across the street has been pretty vocal in their feelings about it. They weren't in favor of it. The property can still be a productive investment for the Shaws. It's rented. They have an apartment that's, I don't know if it's rented at this current moment, but in the past it's been leased. There's an opportunity to redo the bottom portion into an apartment to have a more another rental income stream. Okay, that's not unusual. People do that all the time, all across the country. I just feel that council should protect property owners from commercial encroachment into residential use areas. Vienna has plenty of commercial spaces all throughout our commercial district, so I don't know why we want to zone this one commercial. And I understand the argument Mr. Leach just made when he talks about the commercial properties that are within Wood County, right adjacent to where this property is. And that's true, okay? Those properties, commercial properties in Wood County, have been there for decades. They were there in 1997 when the zoning map, the ordinance, was developed. And that doesn't, when they developed that in 1997 and they adopted it, that just didn't happen like somebody just said, oh, this is what the zoning map needs to be. No, it took, from my previous conversations with people in code enforcement, it took like a year to come up with that map. Plenty of meetings, discussions, so on. Once again, those properties were still there in 1997. And at that time, the council, the planning commission, whatever, they did not decide to take 5708 and say, you know what, that would be better to zone that commercial, it would be productive, it would enhance these properties that are already in Wood County. They could have done that, but they didn't, okay? Also, in 2007, when the comprehensive plan was adopted, that didn't happen overnight either, okay? There were plenty of meetings with the planning commission, there were stakeholder meetings, et cetera, et cetera. And at that time, in the comprehensive plan, they did not want to make that piece of property commercial, okay? Because when you read the narrative part, it says, we want to, you know, help maintain and sustain commercial property from 36th Street down to the tip of our southern border, okay? So I think when you start talking about 5708, it really becomes an outlier. It's absolutely in conflict with the comprehensive plan. There's a lot of information in the comprehensive plan, but I just go back to what the land use, what they're talking about land use on page 65 and 68, and then I look at those maps, which then reaffirm the fact of what the intention of the comprehensive plan is. So once again, we're mandated by law to have a comprehensive plan, and we're mandated to follow it. I also have my answers to the 7 questions that the attorney talked about last week. And question number 1, the existing use and zoning of nearby property. The nearby properties are zoned residential. The commercial zone is nearly 24 blocks south, beginning at 34th Street and ending at Vienna's southern boundary with Parkersburg. The Question number 2 is the extent to which property values are diminished by the particular zoning restrictions. The surrounding property is residential, and many may lose value to being next door or close to a commercial property. Commercial zoning is the least restrictive. Residents would be unable to prevent undesirable businesses from locating next to them because any business that can be in the commercial zone can be located at 5708 except for video gambling. Residents would have to contend with commercial lighting and advertising signs, both of which Vienna has inadequate ordinances to restrict. Examples of business with light and sign pollution can be found at the vape shop on 34th Street and also on 20th and Grand Central Avenue. Number 3, the extent to which the destruction of property values of the plaintiff promotes the health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the public. The potential decrease in property values for residents would impact their financial security and well-being, as Ms. Gelpsey, I'm sorry if I pronounced your name incorrectly, had stated in her remarks. Number 4, the relative gain to the public as compared to the hardship imposed on the individual property owner. So the public is not likely to benefit from a single commercial building at this location. Residents would experience increased traffic and congestion. 5708 has inadequate parking, only 4 spaces, and they would rely on the parking directly on Route 14. Residents also rely on those spaces, which are directly in front of their homes. The potential for increased light and noise pollution is also a negative benefit to the public. No hardship exists for the owners of 5708. The owners of the building currently enjoy rental income from the upstairs apartment. The main portion of the building could be converted into an apartment. According to a recent housing study, the Mid-Ohio Valley is in dire need of apartments. Converted storefronts are desirable because of their uniqueness. Number 5, the sustainability of the subject property for the zone purposes. The property would be the only commercially zoned property within this residential zone. The building was built in 1945, and I'm sorry, Mr. Shaw said 1944, so I'll stand corrected, but prior to Vienna's zoning and subdivision regulations, the zoning regulations were first adopted in 1965 and have been amended since that time. The current zoning was adopted in 1997. The building has served as an apartment and storage for the former owner's construction business during that time. The property can continue to be productive and income generating for the current property owners without rezoning it to commercial. Number 6, the length of time the property has been vacant as zoned. Consider in the context of land development in the area in the vicinity of the property. Okay, I replied none. The property is currently being used as an apartment. There's an opportunity to expand the bottom half of the building to apartments, whereby increasing the income stream for the current property owner. And number 7 is the most important thing, the adopted comprehensive plan. Rezoning the property to commercial is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan provides recommendations on future land use in various land use categories as shown in the future land use map. The comprehensive plan recognizes the commercial zone as having 2 parts, the town center and the commercial area. The entire commercial zone moves south from 36th Street to Vienna's border with Parkersburg, just past the Grand Central Mall. The property at 5708 is in the northernmost tip of Vienna, nearly 24 blocks away from the nearest commercial property in the city. Wood County abuts to the city's northern boundary. There are many commercial properties in Wood County close to 5708. However, those commercial properties are not new development. They existed prior to 1997. The current zoning map, which was adopted in 1997, could have considered the commercial property in Wood County and allowed 5708 to be commercial. Instead, the decision was made to make that property residential like all the properties surrounding it. The comprehensive plan that was adopted in 2007 could have also considered the adjacent commercial property in Wood County. Instead, the comprehensive plan focuses on supporting and growing the commercial land use from 36 south to Vienna's border with Parkersburg. Zoning for commercial land use north of 36th Street is not supported in the comprehensive plan, and I ask that this be recorded as well.
I was just going to ask if
Yeah.
I could have that in, anybody else that wrote theirs out. I didn't write mine out. I considered these things, but
I
if
will
you've
send it
written it
to you
out.
digitally too.
Yeah,
That
that's
would
fine.
be easier.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Bibby? Roger?
Yeah, I'm here, Mayor.
I didn't want to omit you this evening. Is there any comments you'd like to make?
Not at this time.
All right, thank you. Is there any further discussion?
I would, if I can just say a few things, I'll be brief. I understand that this is kind of a complex issue. It's a sensitive topic for people that live here and nearby. But I have to agree with Councilman Leach on a lot of his points. This is a commercial building. You drive by this building and it looks like a commercial building. There's no arguing that. I understand that even if in the city of Vienna, a lot of the properties adjacent to it are zoned residential. As Councilman Leach said, all of the things north in the county are all commercial. I don't see any concerns with some of the other points that were brought up. I understand that this might be kind of a frustrating or a contentious point, but I think that anything going into this building is going to be much more significant than it's sitting as it is now. Driving into the city of Vienna from the north, the first thing that you see is this empty building. And I like to think on the positive side of things and imagine something really wonderful going in here. I love the historic aspect of this building, and I don't want to deny the significance of that. And so, I understand, and I've heard both sides of this, and I've heard arguments from a lot of people here this evening, but I still think that supporting this and converting it to a commercial property is the right move.
Mr. Azinger?
Was the previous owner, you said he used it to store his business equipment or supplies or whatever?
Yes.
Would that not be a commercial? He certainly wasn't a residential use if he had his two-by-fours in there or whatever.
I don't believe he sold anything out of that building. He simply used
But
it.
he did stores.
Yes, sir.
And it wasn't occupied by people.
No, sir.
So it seems like to be a little grandfather.
Okay.
Grandpa.
All right.
I'd like to respond then, if I may, because I know the Shaws had talked about putting in a closed closet, or a closed ministry there, which is essentially the same thing Mr. Patterson did. The previous owner, he used it for storage and wasn't required to come to the planning commission and make that piece of property commercial. If Mrs. Shaw wanted to have her clothing ministry there, it's storage, it's not open to the public, she doesn't collect any money, there's no implication on taxes, she doesn't have to have a business license, so I don't know why that would have to be zoned commercial for her to do that.
Any other
One or
comments?
the other.
Any other comments this evening? All right. We have a motion and a second to approve on second reading the ordinance rezoning all of lots 5 and 6. I'll call for the question. Would you poll the council, please?
Ms. Williams?
No.
Mr. Azinger?
Yes.
Mr. Leach?
Yes.
Mr. Bibby?
Yes.
Mr. Rapp?
Yes.
I say yes. Mr. Mancuso?
Yes.
It passes on second reading, 6-1. So we will adjust the zoning map for that rezoning. We move on to new business now. The first item on our agenda this evening is something I think you all enjoy a lot. Jack, if you would introduce the presentation for Trek Vienna, please. And could I get you to turn the Elmo back off? That light is no value here. No, it's on the back side. You just need to, Jack.
On the Elmo.
No,
look here.
Right here.
Okay.
Come around the podium. Now turn and look. See the light? Thank you.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you all, because about 4 years ago, we started on Trek Vienna when we received a property from Vienna Baptist Church. We didn't really count on COVID starting at that time. So we've actually gone through phase 1 and phase 2 is now complete. I want to introduce Tina Allman with Allman Design. She's somebody that we met very fortunately in the development when we first started into Trek Vienna. Phase 2 was made possible by you all by supporting our budget request, by the McDonough Foundation, by Sisters Health Foundation, and the state of West Virginia through Delegate Conley. So anyway, it's all complete. We're going to have a grand opening on May the 19th, Friday. Invitations have been sent out. We hope you all can make it to it. We also anticipate, we've invited tree commissions all around the state of West Virginia. Elkins has already responded and said they plan on sending their tree commission over because they're interested in duplicating the Trek Vienna project. So again, that's May 19th, 10 o'clock, 36th Street and Grand Central at the station there. It's completed, just recently completed when we put the new kiosk in, and we uploaded 4 videos that have been created by Tina. And we're going to show the first one. There's 4 of them. You can go to our website, www.friendsofviennawestvirginia.org.
And the TrekViennaWV.com.
TrekViennaWV.com.
Yeah.
So Tina's going to play the first one that she's created.
I'm going to turn the lights down.
Will you repeat that second website again? Trek Vienna, West Virginia?
TrekViennaWV.com.
Do you need this?
I will, yeah.
Can you hear that?
The pioneers who explored and settled lands in the 1700s did so at high personal and financial risk, leaving behind the comforts of civilization to forge new paths and create new opportunities for their families and future generations. There were no roads, no towns, no fences, no established resources, just land. For the settlers in the early American colonies, the land west of the Allegheny Mountains was like gold. Dr. John Briscoe possessed a true pioneering spirit. At age 16, he moved from St. Mary's County, Maryland, to forge his future in Frederick County, Virginia. He had interactions with prominent people such as James Norris, Lord Thomas Fairfax, and Samuel Washington. Dr. Briscoe married Elizabeth Harrison McMillan in 1746. They had 6 children: Parmenas, John Jr., Elizabeth, Sarah, Francis, and Hezekiah. Acquiring land meant increasing wealth. Land prospectors viewed land acquisition as a business. It was not in the simple acquisition of the property, but in renting that property to others to be settled and farmed that created their fortunes. This was the model used by prospectors such as George Washington, who owned property along Bullskin Run in Frederick County. Like Washington, Dr. Briscoe started out with acquiring smaller tracts of land, 100 to 400 acres at a time. The revenue gained from renting the land to other settlers allowed him to continue to purchase more acreage in Frederick County. By 1770, he had acquired over 3,200 acres of land, which rivaled that of Washington's land acreage at the time. Virginia was a vast colony at this time, extending as far west as the Mississippi River, encompassing all of what is now present-day West Virginia, Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois. Dr. Briscoe saw an opportunity to increase his family's wealth through new land acquisition in the West. He decided to move and create a new settlement. Under the Great Britain Proclamation of 1763, Dr. Briscoe was paid for his service in the French and Indian War in the amount of 500 acres of land in Jefferson County. But Briscoe had his sights set on an area along the Ohio River. It was widely known that George Washington had traveled to the Ohio Valley in 1770, surveying with the intent to claim thousands of acres along the Great Kanawha River and the Ohio River, including areas near the Little Kanawha River. Washington sent William Crawford to inspect and resurvey the lands he intended to claim. While Washington surveyed the lands in the Ohio River Valley, no formal patents were ever filed. This did not deter Washington from writing a letter to Dr. Briscoe in 1772, stating his claim and threatening legal action if Briscoe and his sons settled on the property. No such suit was ever made because Dr. Briscoe decided to settle at an area north of Washington's tract. On March 2, 1773, Dr. Briscoe and his family arrived with 5 canoes and 15 men to start their settlement. Dr. Briscoe put ashore at a fine bottomland opposite a nearly mile-long island close to the Ohio shore, just 6 miles above the mouth of the Little Kanawha River. A quick inspection showed the ground to be rich indeed, level and well drained by 2 small creeks. He announced that this was where he could start his settlement, and he named the little creek at the base of the hills to the north, Briscoe Run. The Frontiersman.
That's the first. We'll just show you one more. There's, like I said, there's 4 of them. They're all fantastic, and I think people are really going to enjoy them when they play them. When you play them at the kiosk down at the station, or play them online. The painting you saw in the very beginning, if you remember back, that was a painting from what, 1830?
1835, and it was produced by renowned landscape painter Charles Sullivan. And a lot of his paintings at the time were of different scenes in the Ohio Valley and a lot of the early people's mounds in different locations. But he painted that from what we think is from an overview looking toward Vienna from the Ohio side at Constitution, Ohio.
That painting's at Campus Martius.
Yes,
Museum.
it is at Campus Martius.
You know, if you don't stop and think about it, you think this area was probably founded by trappers. You know, I always thought, well, trappers along the river and they found the area. But then you find out through all this.
Dr. Joseph Spencer is considered to be the founder of Vienna, West Virginia. He was a descendant of the Spencers, who were barons and lords in the British monarchy, dating back to William the Conqueror. 5 Spencer brothers immigrated to New England in 1634 and helped to establish the town of Haddam, Connecticut. The son of Major General Joseph Spencer Sr., Dr. Spencer grew up in a prominent military and religious family. He married his wife Deborah Selden in 1777 and served as a surgeon and as an aide to his father during the American Revolution. Deborah's father, Samuel Selden, was captured at the Battle of Kips Bay in New York and died in captivity in 1776. Following the war, Dr. Spencer purchased the land along the Ohio River once owned by the Briscoes. In 1794, the Spencers moved to the area with their children. Others came with the family to establish a settlement, including Abner Lord, who was Dr. Spencer's brother-in-law. Upon their arrival, the Spencers started to build their settlement, which initially consisted of 8 houses. They named the city Vienna. Dr. Spencer, Austin Nichols, and Abner Lord submitted a petition to the Virginia General Assembly to formally petition the settlement consisting of 100 acres laid off into lots of 1/2 acre each. On December 1st, 1795, the Virginia General Assembly established Vienna with an official decree. Dr. Spencer became a prominent person in the Ohio Valley. He continued his land investments, purchasing 130,000 acres in 1796 and over 3,400 acres between 1808 and 1815. He served as a doctor and as a justice of Wood County, and was also one of the first deacons of the First Congregational Church in Marietta, Ohio, serving for over 25 years. The initial attempt to establish Vienna as a thriving city was not successful because few of the plots were purchased. In 1799, the Virginia General Assembly reduced the area of the city from 100 acres to 60 acres. It took time to attract more settlers to the area, and much of Vienna remained farmland and orchards until the industrial boom of the early 1900s. The city of Vienna was officially incorporated in 1935.
So like I say, there's 2 more videos to go with this. They'll play at the kiosk on 4 of them. We'll be there. Can you tell some of the places quickly that you've got your research from, some of the universities?
Oh my goodness. Let's start with this because it'll just keep playing. Okay, so I want to backtrack a little bit. When we first started talking about producing the videos for the kiosk, there was a lot of research that had to be done beyond what had already been produced with the panels that are at the pavilion. If you have not been there, I think it's very enlightening because I don't think that a lot of people considered how broad reaching the history of Vienna extends. And I didn't even know that until I started doing the research and really following the land documents. Those were the big tell. These were people, like Jack said, they weren't just trappers and just, general people who decided, hey, I'm going to go move west and build a cabin and that's where I'm going to stake my claim. No, they were wealthy people. And they had to have money because of the process that it took in order for them to obtain land grants, file the appropriate paperwork so that they could legally own the land. And that process took time. So I have been in touch with people all over the East Coast, various libraries, historical societies, and all of them have been incredibly helpful. Whenever we first started with this and I started getting so much information, I joked to Jack that this would make a great book just because there was so much there. And here it is. This is the proof copy, but it details everything that's in the videos and more, and shows a lot of the historical documents that I uncovered, as well as a lot of the people who were key players who were important in different respects along the way, including Simon Kenton, who came here and stayed at Briscoe's settlement. And there have been several accounts of his time in the area and what the settlement was like at that time. So,
Yeah, it's an unbelievable history when you start learning about Vienna and Simon Kenton and the different people who came here, George Washington, through the area. So, and a lot of everything's documented. You know, it's nothing hearsay.
No.
2 and 3 sources on everything. It's in the book or in the panels or in the videos, and you're going to be surprised. I mean, it's when I looked at the deeds and I saw, you know, Patrick Henry signing off on the deeds, it was pretty amazing. You go, wow, you know, when you read the deeds and you read about like Pond Run along the river, and they call it the Indian Fields area, that you're getting the Indian fields in the deeds, you know, and everything, it makes you stop and think about what you're looking at. So,
yeah.
You know, like I say, the grand opening, very thankful for Tina for all the work she's done. Vienna has a history it can be proud of and look at. Now you know your history.
Yeah.
Glad you were a part of it.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful project. I mean, it's been very enlightening to me because, you know, I grew up in this general area, and I've lived here my whole life, but everyone has always talked about, you know, the Northwest Territory and the settling of Marietta, but there's so much more to the story. You know, the people who were on the other side of the river, I mean, they came before there was ever, you know, a Marietta, Ohio.
Right. Thank you for your time. Hope to see you on the 19th at 10 o'clock at 36th Street at the opening of Trek Vienna. And phase 2 is done, so enjoy.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, Tom.
I have a friend that lives down in Harrisonburg, Virginia. Excuse me, and he has deep roots here. His dad's name was Samuel Spencer Stone. And so he has a lot of stuff down there, and I think he's thinking about donating to the University of Virginia, and it should be in Parkersburg, West Virginia. And I think if somebody would approach him, he might be receptive to donating some of that. He has an original signature of George Washington. So anyway.
Thank you.
May I interject for just 1 second? There is an enormous amount of information that is at the University of Virginia Library, and that's probably why he's wanting to donate things there. I mean, a lot of the land documents and things that I found, you know, all came from their repository. But one of the reasons he may have a George Washington signature, which was one of the facts that we didn't know until we started this process, was that the Spencer line, George Washington was one of their distant relatives.
Okay. We're looking forward to it. I think everybody in town is going to want to see that, so thank you. So we move on to our second item this evening, which is our internal budget revision number 4. Councilman Leach, please.
Internal budget revision number 4 for 2 departments. The first is Vienna Rec, transfer to move money from professional service to engineering of the soccer fields. The budget before the change is $62,860, reduction of $13,500 to fund the project. Remaining budget $49,360, increase to professional service $13,500. The second is for the fire department. This is to move money to cover increased costs of fuel and repairs to trucks. They're moving $9,000 from training and education. I'm sorry, $5,000 from training and education. $2,000 of that goes to auto supplies. $3,000 of that goes to maintenance of autos, and the remaining budget then is $4,000 for training and education from $9,000.
Okay. Again, this is internal budget revision number 4. So there is no new money. This is simply a transfer between line items. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of internal budget revision number 4.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve internal budget revision number 4. Is there any further discussion?
I just have a few quick questions. And sorry, I just have not had time to get through this week. And I didn't get the chance to make it to the park board meeting was it last night? Um, can someone kind of elaborate a little bit more on the CEC project that we're paying for? I mean, I thought we had already located where we're putting the baseball fields, and that was kind of already done internally. So I'm not sure what changed that requires CEC's involvement.
Do you want to me? So this is actually for the, finding out what the engineering is going to be for the soccer fields, where fields 4, 5, and 6 were on the northern side of the road. So this is actually for the soccer fields, needing to see what the grading needs to be and all drainage and that kind of stuff. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes a lot more sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, you were correct in what you were saying.
CEC did the original plan for the park, and because they've already done all of the groundwork for that, that was the reason why they were selected to do that. I mean, they already have all the basic stuff done, so, okay?
Yeah.
I only have one question. I noticed this is coming out of 541, which is VRIA salaries. When Mr. Knopfsinger was here, he talked about coming back and getting that money out of salaries in order to pay, because the VRA, of course, has taken over youth sports, and they need to pay their umpires and so on, the folks that they need to pay. So I thought he was going to scoop up that money. I'm just trying to figure out if we're going to have another budget revision to pay for that.
Out of salaries?
Yeah.
Because there are no employees in that line item. That line item is actually a deadline. So the money that's being transferred out of it is not allocated for anything. At this point, I do not know of anything that's on the horizon, but could there be? Maybe.
Okay.
We're almost to the end of the year now, and so we don't think so. But whatever's remaining in that fund, $49,000, is not allocated. It is a deadline item. So.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Mr. Bibby, any questions or comments?
No, I don't have any, Mayor. Thanks.
All right, then I'll call for the question. Would you poll council, please?
Yes, Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Isinger?
Yes.
Mr. Leach?
Yes.
Mr. Rapp?
Yes.
I say yes. Mr. Bibby. It helps me to see him. Mr. Bibby. Okay. And Mr. Mankiewicz?
Yes.
All right, passes unanimously. Thank you. This evening, we have with us, our third item is a resolution authorizing participation in the Parkersburg Wood County Home Consortium for the period of July the 1st, 2023 to July 30th, 2024, and approving the fiscal year 2023 annual action plan and authorizing the filing of the plans with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. We have with us this evening Ms. Tony Tiano, who is our grant writer, who takes care of all of our CDBG work, and Mr. Drew Thomas from the city of Parkersburg. So whichever one of you two would like to be first.
All right. Did you guys all get a copy of it? You got it? Okay. If anybody else likes to see these, we've got them on our website. It's parkersburgcity.com. It'll be in the reports section for development.
Drew, could you speak into the microphone,
okay,
please?
yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so there's nothing new that we're doing with the money as compared to previous years. There's the same money we set aside for housing development. That's new housing. We do tenant-based rental assistance. We've expanded that last year, and it's been pretty popular. And there's down payment assistance programs, and there's owner-occupied rehab. That's a loan program we do throughout the county. So if anybody needs home repair, these are all the low-income households as well. And we set aside money for low-income housing tax credit developers. So that is a low-income housing project. We kind of put these away, keep some for any time a developer approaches us wanting to work on something.
We do participate in this program, and people from Vienna do come down and can take advantage of the opportunities in this particular program.
Yes, any of these programs are available to people in Vienna.
Okay. Any questions for Drew? All right. Mr. Skogstad, how about if you read that resolution, sir? Well, great.
Thanks. This is a resolution of the City of Vienna authorizing participation in the Parkersburg Wood County Home Consortium for the period of July 1, 2023 to June 30, 2024, and approving the fiscal year 2023 annual action plan and authorizing the filing of the plans with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Whereas Title II of the National Affordable Housing Action Act of 1990 provides for the creation of the Home Investment Partnership Program, hereinafter referred to as HOME. And whereas the home regulations promulgated by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development under 24 CFR Part 92 authorizes units of general local government to enter into housing consortium cooperation agreements. And whereas there's still a need throughout Wood County, West Virginia to provide affordable housing for low and moderate income residents. And whereas the City of Parkersburg's Development Department has prepared a fiscal year 2023 annual action plan, which proposes how the entitlement grant funds will be expended to address the housing needs identified in the 5-year consolidated plan. And whereas a draft of the fiscal year 2023 annual action plan was on public display from April 27, 2023 through May 12, 2023, and a series of public meetings and hearings were held on said plans, and comments of citizens were taken into consideration in the preparation of the final documents. Whereas the Wood County Commission, the City of Parkersburg, the City of Vienna, the City of Williamstown have formed a consortium which has been designated as a participating jurisdiction under the HOME program, thereby entitling the consortium to an annual funding. And whereas the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has awarded the Parkersburg Wood County Home Consortium a home grant in the amount of $340,496 for fiscal year 2023. And whereas the City of Parkersburg recognized the need to obtain funding for affordable housing and has identified the home program as a source of funds to meet this need. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City of Vienna that the City of Vienna will continue to cooperate with the City of Parkersburg in a consortium for participation in the home program. A copy of this resolution is to be submitted in the request to HUD to approve funding of the Parkersburg Wood County Home Consortium for the above fiscal year 2023 Home Investment Partnership Program.
All right. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the resolution authorizing participation in the Parkersburg Wood County Home Consortium for the period of July the 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the resolution. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then please poll the council, ma'am.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Azinger?
Yes.
Mr. Leach?
Yes.
Mr. Rapp?
Yes.
I say yes. Mr. Bibby?
Yes.
Mr. Mancuso?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Drew, thank you for your time. Tony?
The City of Vienna will be receiving $103,652 for its 2023-2024 Community Development Block Grant Program. We've held public hearings. You should have a copy of the action plan, or it was emailed to you. I doubt anybody reads them, but anyway, that's it there. The way we were proposing to spend the funds is $44,325 to the city's housing rehab program for energy efficient items, $44,326 for the city's small minor home repair program, and $15,000 for administrative costs. We're estimating during the upcoming year that those funds will do anywhere between 8 to 10 projects. And during the current year, we've done 14 houses and we're out of money. So it's been a success.
Tony, I think there's a correction on that. Under the housing, when you said 44,325.
326.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry.
Don't make it balanced.
Well, that's what it says. My eyes aren't good, yes.
All right. Any questions for Tony? All right, then I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the annual action plan for 23-24 on our community development block grant funds.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the annual action plan for 23-24 for our community development block grant funds. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then I'll call for the question. Would you please poll the council?
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Azinger?
Yes.
Mr. Leach?
Yes.
Mr. Rapp?
Yes.
I say yes. Mr. Bibby?
Yes.
Mr. Mancuso?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tony, thank you. At this time, I'm going to ask for an executive session to discuss a legal matter.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We go into executive session for a legal matter. Is there any discussion? All right. Mr. Bibby, I'm going to call you back on my cell phone, okay?